Welcome back to the show here, Larry, Mike, and Brad. And Mike, it's Derby weekend. Derby 150. Did you know that 150th run for the Roses is this weekend?
I did not know that, but I'm waiting to see the bow tie this year.
Oh yeah.
I think you are the former Illinois senator. You're the Paul Simon of the Derby, and people are out there probably. I think that's a checklist. Everybody has to see what you are wearing for the bow tie this
It,
week.
it's a once a year because I'm not a bow tie guy, right?
Yes, yes,
I
yes.
am no Paul Simon. I'm no Orville Redenbacher, Harlan Sanders. I don't know who else wears the bow ties, but that's not me. But yes, here's a crazy thing is that because they love the look so much that they buy us bow tie, and it's a bow tie you have to tie. There's a woman named Sydney DeLong who I think went to school like in Connecticut. She's like the Southern Belle kind of thing. And she actually will line up and she'll tie each one of our bow ties before we go on. So yeah, for those of you who
Like a
want
bunch of children.
exactly, it really is like, Mom, my turn. But seriously, if you want to see the ugly face behind the smooth voice.com Saturday beginning at 11 a.m. Eastern, I'll be on with my co-anchor Megan Mannering for my fourth Derby, by the way. Now, a guy who was always dapper, bow tie, no tie, doesn't matter. Back on the show again, Doug Eldridge. He's founder of Achilles PR, nationally known agent and analyst. You'll see him sometimes on Fox Business giving his insights. And once in a while, he comes on here as well. Doug, are you a bow tie guy?
I am not, but I have two comments on the bow ties. Number one, in the hierarchy of iconic bow tie wearers, Abraham Lincoln, Pee Wee Herman, Larry Smith. Secondly, tying a bow tie should have been part of my Eagle Scout project. The day that I got married, I actually paid a guy to come over and tie all of the groomsmen and ushers' ties, including my own, because it was so tricky. I didn't want to do the clip on. That is a skill to be sure.
Yeah, dude, that's impressive. Because I just said clip. Of course, this is back in the dark ages, back before the internet, when you didn't have YouTube to like go look and see what it was. But
yes.
it's impressive. You actually had the actual tied bow ties.
Yeah, for sure. We didn't do it, but it sure looked good, man. It was worth it. It was worth the money.
That's awesome.
Thank you, James, wherever you are. You were a godsend that day.
That's right. The bow ties. There we go. And I'm on Instagram as well. We'll put the pictures up there. Feel free to make fun because it's the only time you'll see it until Derby 150 next year. Derby this weekend. Doug, though, want to talk a couple of things. Obviously, the NFL draft just finished up. It's funny. We were talking the other day that it's one thing that everybody gets focused on like the first round and what their teams do in the first round, but there's so much value in rounds 2 through 7. And I know as an agent, you really pay close attention to this and how teams stack themselves. Is there a team out there that you think that overall came out of the weekend and really improved themselves, maybe above what was expected?
First of all, you're spot on. The first round gets the attention it does for good reason, right? It's the flash and dash. Historically, it used to be in New York every year on the red carpet and what have you. I love that it rotates now. Detroit set the record with 700,000 or 800,000 people turning out for the draft. That was an incredible display. But you're right, man. There's a saying in the NFL that teams are built on day 3. That's rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7. It starts at noon and finishes up sometime after 5 o'clock. And that's where you get your roster depth, not only in terms of the guys that will compete for positions during training camp, but also positional depth. And you pull a lot of your special teamers there. And in a close game, that's often where it's decided on special teams. So yeah, to me, as an agent, the third day was always the most important. That's where we had our guys on the board. I've been lucky to work with first rounders, but teams are built on that final day. In terms of who actually came out the best, not to sound like a homer being here in the DC area, but I think the Redskins, nay Washington football team, nay Commanders, and that might change yet again, really came out not necessarily on top, but with a solid draft from top to bottom for the first time. Remember, Larry, you did a long tour here in DC. For the first time in a long time, this franchise was marred by foolish first-round picks, passion picks rather than purpose picks, and lacking that key depth that every team needs. Remember, statistically, there is a 100% certainty that you will be injured during the course of your NFL career. 100%. The only question is the severity of that injury. And so teams have to have depth, right? Not only quality, but quantity at every position on the field. And I think when you look at the Commanders, from Jaden Daniels out of LSU, a lot of pressure is going to be put on him. But they also got the stud tight end in Senate, an absolute big body slot or edge defender out to run with wide receivers out of Michigan. They took some key offensive linemen, which again, I think is the most important position. Quarterback determines your franchise, and it's the hardest position in all of sports. But if you don't have those big bodies up front, those Maytags, then how are you protecting your investment in the form of the quarterback? So when I look back and look at a round by round selection and actually where those guys fit on a presumptive roster for the Commanders, I think they did a fantastic job.
Yeah, that's not good. That's not good news for us Cowboy fans, but we're getting used to not good news. Jerry seems to be channeling the ghost of Al Davis as he watches the team go down the pipes. But one of the things I think is interesting, if I was going to become an NFL GM, I think the way I would run my draft is I would, as you said, I would load up on offense and defensive linemen. That's how I would do my early picks. And if I had to trade every 6 or 7 years to get a guy that I thought was a franchise quarterback, I would do whatever it took to get that guy, because that first 5 years, when that player isn't making a lot of money, that's when you can make your difference, because right now Dallas is going to have to pay Dak $60 million for a guy who's maybe the 12th best quarterback in the league. And somebody who's Jaden Daniels is going to be getting paid, I don't know, whatever the first round guy is going to get paid. But that gap can give him a lot of protection, a lot of weapons, and a lot of people to stop the other team from scoring.
Yeah, 2 points there. Number one, offensive and defensive lines, to me, is where you build your team. That is the literal foundation of your structure. And if you don't fortify that foundation, everything you build on top of that is on the proverbial house of cards. Offensively, if you can't protect your quarterback, you will not win. Defensively, if you can't pressure the quarterback, you will not win. And so I agree with you 100%. You have to build your team from the trenches. And that's not old school 3 yards in a cloud of dust. That's in line with the new school analytics. Like, it's a pass-centric league, but you have to have time. Conversely, you have to cut that time down and pressure the quarterback. To that end, I don't know what's going on with the Cowboys. Jerry is Jerry. You are getting Zeke back, so maybe there's brighter days for you. Feed Zeke. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I got asked, Larry, you mentioned on the intro about Fox Business. The last question I got as we were wrapping the segment was the value of drafting a quarterback in the first round. And I said, it depends on your infrastructure. If you don't have an infrastructure in place, that quarterback's not going to succeed. And by definition, if you're drafting at the top of the first round, you don't have a good team. And presumably, you don't have that infrastructure in place. And staying with the example of the Commanders just for a moment, while Jaden is on that rookie contract, and you're right, rookie contracts are slotted in the first round, right? Now, you can renegotiate early prior to the expiration if it's in the best interest of the team. But while he's still on a team and cap-friendly contract, that frees up so much capital to put the other pieces around that young quarterback, both in terms of offensive protection and offensive options. And the position that is quickly becoming the most dynamic on the field is tight end. And the reason that's so important is because the speed of the game for these young quarterbacks, even if they go into an offensive system that's similar to what they ran in college, the speed, I often say it's like trying to read subtitles on fast forward. The game comes at you so much faster. So having that intermediate big body threat dragging over the middle is invaluable to a young quarterback. Not just your Lamborghinis on the edge that are running that post route, but that big Chevy that's going to take a drag route across the middle that gives you that quick dump off option. So you are seeing an evolution of the game, but sometimes the old ways are still the best ways. And I say that to say you have to invest in your offensive and defensive line, period.
Great points. Talking with Doug Eldridge again with Achilles PR. Also, as we mentioned, you can see him on Fox Business, national agent and analyst. I want to shift gears right now to Caitlin Clark. And also, you were on Fox Business talking about this as well. The dollars. We're going to talk a lot about the WNBA. We've got a big announcement on the show next week regarding WNBA, and we'll discuss that later. But we want to talk about really Caitlin. Listen, you know me. I grew up watching girls' high school basketball as a kid in Illinois. So I think this is fantastic. I saw Jacqueline Joyner play when she was still Jacqueline and the big fro before the track thing.
Yes.
It's Jacqueline, not Jackie. That's how far back. That's how old I am. 28 million over 8 years from Nike is fantastic. And it's embarrassing that I saw one other company was so low, like she didn't even call them back. Like they didn't even make the, we're like, yeah.
Yeah. So I think Adidas got out when they capped at 1.5 million a year. I believe her representatives during the All-Star break had said, let's simplify this, let's streamline it. Our floor is 3 million. And that's where we go from there. Puma was out early. Adidas took the exit ramp at that point. It came down then presumably to Nike, and Under Armour had a shorter deal with a higher per year average. Nike, culturally speaking, carries a certain degree of panache and riz, as the kids say these days. When did I become the old man to get off my lawn, guy? But it's true, culturally speaking. And I think about David Falk when Michael Jordan was coming out of UNC, and there was this upstart, unknown outfit out of Oregon called Nike. And the smart money was on going with either Adidas or Converse, which really had a stranglehold on the NBA at that point. And Falk went up there and they said, listen, we're going to give you a signature shoe like Caitlin. And they said, for the sake of round numbers, $3 million a year. And Falk famously said, no, we'll take 2. With $1 million that we're putting back on the table, we want you to commit to direct marketing around this shoe. Invest that money in a dedicated, effective marketing campaign to push out the Air Jordan shoe. And fast forward 40 years, not only is Michael Jordan arguably the most recognizable athlete in the world, but the Air Jordan brand is equally recognizable. In terms of Caitlin, there was a lot of pushback saying, this is unbelievable, she's underpaid. And as I said on that Fox interview you referenced, 2 things can be true at the same time. She can have just received the highest contract ever in the history of women's sports and simultaneously be underpaid. Now, those 2 things seem like they're in conflict, paradoxical, but they can be true. She set the mark. Now, that's not just a one-off. That doesn't mean that every player moving forward is going to hit that same level, because she's generational, not just from the record book standpoints, but back-to-back championships and the draw she's creating across the WNBA, with ticket prices going 10 to 15-fold what they were for the cheap seats just last year. But what she brings here, and the argument for her perhaps being underpaid, is her potential, her personality, her play, and her PR appeal. She's not off-putting. You need the trash talker. And I say this as a lifelong committed Bill Laimbeer fan. I love a flagrant foul, an elbow, and arguing with the refs, but she has that polished appeal that extends well beyond the confines of the court. So you can make the argument that she's underpaid, but it's hard to make that when she just established the highest contract in the history of women's basketball by a long shot. So kudos to her. It's well-deserved, and it's just the beginning.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting the directions Nike's going. The shoe industry, the apparel industry is struggling right now. And they just signed Roman Reigns from the WWE, and now they have the Air Reigns brand that they have going as well. And it really looks like they are trying to go out and get new markets as opposed to retrenching and just staying in where they're familiar.
And I think you're going to see that. And I say this only half joking. Eventually, they're going to get into esports apparel. And I don't know what that means other than sweatpants and a zip up, but they have to go where the market is taking them. When you look at the Olympics, the classical sports genre, fencing and kayaking and all of these quote unquote marginal sports. But now look at the future. We're going to get breakdancing. We're getting surfing. There's a big push for esports, or as I call it, competitive video gaming. Bring on the haters. But that's where the trend is going with this new generation. And Nike has always had their finger and their thumb on the pulse. And so I think it's smart to invest, really diversify their investments in terms of Roman Reigns. Obviously, the WWE is seeing an unprecedented spike in popularity that I don't really think we've seen since maybe the Steve Austin heel era. And before that, Hulk Hogan, which established the then WWF as what it was, put the tent poles for where it is today. So I think that's really smart of Nike. I think it was really smart to not only sign her, but to create a women's specific shoe. There was talk that the original offer was for her to essentially relaunch the Kobe line. Now that they came to terms with his widow and that namesake's going to stay in the Nike family, smartest thing they could do is give her signature shoe. That's going to put not only butts in the buckets in terms of WNBA ticket sales, but it's also going to double down on your female product offering. And remember, guys, when you go to the gym, the fellas are in that old t-shirt with stains on it, that they mow the lawn in, the sleeves are cut off, an old crappy pair of mesh shoes and whatever else. Whereas not to sound sexist or whatever, but the empirical data supports this. Women will buy 2 or 3 outfits for every 1 t-shirt that men do. So from a merchandising index standpoint, catering to that female consumer demographic is very important. This was a savvy decision by Nike. Regardless of it being a new benchmark in terms of women's contract, it's pennies compared to what they're going to earn based off her name, image, and likeness and the merchandise that they push attached to it.
And that explains a little bit why Nike is not going with Larry's bow tie.
Exactly. There's no future in that whatsoever. Hey, we got 30 seconds. Doug, very quickly, in terms of salary, we know that the way that the women's deal is structured different than the men when it comes to NBA and WNBA is how soon do you think that the WNBA and the NBA come together with the players union and kind of restructure the percentages of that to give the women a larger share? Do you see that in the horizon anytime soon?
I don't, if the numbers I'm seeing are accurate, because what the women are pushing for isn't salaries that are commensurate with the men's, because that's ridiculous based on the revenue generated. But what they want is the share of revenue that's in line with the men vis-a-vis the players union. And the last numbers I saw, the WNBA, now we might have a totally different conversation this time next year, but the WNBA was still losing 10 or $12 million a year net. So to do a revenue share that would actually have players writing a check to the league, I do think there's an argument to be made for a more equitable split in terms of revenue. But again, you have to get from the red to the black to the green in order for that to be a viable argument. And to bring the conversation full circle, I think Caitlin Clark is going to be a catalyst for that. She's going to inspire that next generation of little girl who wants to pick up a basketball, who wants to go to the games, who wants to watch it on television. Eclipsed the men's finals this year, which is significant. The WNBA draft drew nearly 2.5 million viewers, which was the most in 25 years. So when this is not hyperbole, when we talk about the current and potential impact of Caitlin Clark, this is drilled down and backed by Nielsen numbers and statistics. Yeah. So again, it may be a really different conversation a year from now when we talk about a revenue split and the like. But Caitlin, make no mistake, will be the asteroid that eliminates the dinosaur level of engagement and compensation that women have known up to this point. She's, as I said on Fox, like Daenerys Targaryen, she came to break the wheel.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, even the two-time champion Aces moving into the larger T-Mobile when Caitlin comes to town. That's how big a draw she is. Doug, we had to leave it there. Awesome to talk with you, Doug Eldridge, Achilles PR, again, national agent and analyst. Always good to have your insights, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, guys. Great to see you. Look forward to seeing that bow tie on Instagram, Larry.
I'll send you a picture. So personally, I'll text you one.
Please do. Good to see you, brother.
All right, good to see you. Take care. We've got more to come after this.